Hey guys, Brian here from 5 to Go. We just made it through the 4th of July week last week, so we had a lot of weekenders and, holiday campers out here in this campground in beautiful, colorful Colorado. And I saw a lot of maybe questionable things. I saw people struggling with different things, and so I just wanted to put this video together for y'all so you can kind of have our recommendations, what we've learned over the last 18 months and 150 plus campgrounds as to like our routine of setting things up and a bunch of common mistakes that you can avoid if you just establish a routine and do things safely and smartly. The first thing is when you pull into a site, make sure you have room for your slides to come out because there's a big tree right here. Our neighbor is a little close in this site. There's a little bit of a hill on the other side. So when we pulled into the site, we kind of got out and looked around, made sure we'd have room for our slides to come out. And it's a good idea to know how long your slides are when they come out. Some people like to kind of measure by standing up against a rig and like putting their arm out. A lot of slides kind of tend to be that long, about 3 feet. We have a big one back there that's about that long. So if you know how long your slides are, you can kind of make sure you're in a good spot before you start doing your whole unhook procedure. So after you know that you're in a spot where you can get your slides out, go ahead and do your leveling side to side. We've covered that in other videos and in other blog posts I'll link to down below. As soon as you are level side to side, put wheel chocks on. We have Anderson levelers on this side, so we put our wheel chocks on the other side. We like these really big, chunky black wheel chocks. With those wheel chocks on, this trailer is not moving. So let's go ahead and talk about hookups. When you pull into your site, you're going to have, hopefully, sewer and electric and water, and you want to make sure that you are close enough to those hookups so you can actually use them with the materials that you have on hand. First thing I want to talk about is electric. So this is our electric hookup. We have a 50 amp rig, and it hooks up right here, which is kind of a little forward of the middle of the rig. I only have this one 50 amp cable, and I think it's about 30 feet, and it has been plenty long for everywhere that we've been. I think twice I've actually had to run the electric, and I do this before you unhook the truck or start setting up and doing whatever, like when you can keep moving. I always hook up the electric just to make sure it's long enough. I think I've had to move like twice. Sometimes the electric pole is like way off in the back or somewhere weird. And then on the other end of the electric, I have a surge protector. Let's go take a look at that. So I did say that our neighbor's a little bit close. Our power pole, this is actually a shared power pole. This is the first time we've ever had a shared power pole. So we got here second. So we got the 30 amp plug. Our neighbor has the 50, and I don't know what he's running on the other one. So this is our dog bone. This converts our 50 to a 30 amp to plug into this post. But what we're here to talk about is this guy right here. This is a surge guard. I'll have a link to this in the description down below. I never, ever, ever hook up to any electricity without this in place. Even residential electricity. Like I'll do a converter to get this to a 20 amp extension cord. I always, always, always have the surge protector. First and foremost, there are little lights on it. So when you hook it up, it'll tell you whether the power is safe. We have encountered 3 campgrounds now where they had neutrals reversed. Not the end of the world, and it's not going to destroy anything, but I would rather just have green lights all over. So in addition to letting me know if the power is good, this also protects us from spikes. We've never encountered one. Like, these things are supposed to die before anything happens in the rig, but we have heard stories about campgrounds with electrical spikes, especially when there are thunderstorms or if you're on like an older kind of edge section of a grid or whatever. It just keeps the power nice and steady and keeps everything inside, all your sensitive electronics, from getting fried if something happens out here. So now we're going to talk about water real quick. The water hookup for this campground is in a particularly awful place. Normally they'll be on a post sticking up out of the ground, but I think these are way down low and buried because it does get below freezing for like half the year here. So I always use a splitter, and I always have a pressure regulator, and I always have a water filter. Those are the first 3 things I have coming off the campground water spigot, and we'll talk about hoses in a second. But the pressure regulator, we've been in campgrounds with really high water pressure, and you do not want anything above like 50, maybe 60 psi going into your rig because those pipes are just not made to survive that. Water inside rigs is pretty much the worst thing that can happen, so you don't want way too much pressure getting inside and blowing things apart. Water filter is, campgrounds aren't really known for having the best, cleanest water supply. I just saw a couple photos on Facebook the other day where this guy's filters were completely brown after 1 day of use. So I always have a water filter. We don't drink the water out of our tap, but we do shower in it. We do like wash our toothbrushes in it. It is going into our water heater, and it is also going into our toilet. So I don't want really minerally heavy, nasty, dirty water getting anywhere inside the rig. So I always have a water filter first before anything else. So let's go talk about hoses. I have a variety of water hoses, and I think total 50. I can reach about 135 feet, so we've never had an issue hooking up to water. My primary water hose is this 0G one because it is super flexible and super easy to put away. Then I also have a couple different lengths of these white Camco no kink drinking hoses. We used to just use these. If you ever use these, you know how much of a pain in the rear they are to spool back up and put back in your rig. So these are just my extras in case we're really far away. This little 10-foot dude here is super handy because when my 0G hose is like just a couple feet short, I just use this instead of unspooling another 25 feet of hose. And I also have an orange hose that is dedicated just to the sewer flush because on our Nautilus system here, on our reflection, we have a, I think it's called a tank wizard that is in the black tank. So I can hook up this hose to this and it sprays stuff out when I dump. So I always have that hose. It is bright orange, it is not drinking water safe, and it is just totally separate, and it only has that one job. That's why it's bright orange and looks like nothing else that I have. So let's go ahead and talk about sewer, and then I've got a couple other tips to get to real quick. When we first started, but looking into RVs about 2 years ago, I was completely afraid of having to deal with sewer and everything that comes out of the black tank and having to hook all this up and everything. Y'all, it is not that hard. It is not difficult, and I think I've only gotten any kind of spillage maybe 2 or 3 times in 18 months. However, always wear gloves. A lot of people don't want to be using disposable gloves because you go through them, it creates a lot of waste. I have these water resistant gloves that you can find at any hardware store, and I always wear these whenever I am touching anything involving this system. So when you're setting up your campsite and you want to make sure that you have enough stuff to reach your hookups, you can see here I actually had to use all 3 of my hose sections, and I think these are like 10, 12, 15 foot sections, and they kind of accordion in and out, but I had to use all 3 to get back to the sewer, and the sewer isn't even at the back of the rig. So depending on where your sewer hookup is on your rig, ours again is kind of up here near power, which is a little forward of the middle of the rig. A lot of times sewer hookups are way in the back. I've had to use all 3 5 or 6 times, so you definitely need to make sure you have enough to reach a pretty long distance. I love it when sewer is right here, but that's a pretty rare case. You need to make sure to also have all of the appropriate hookups and all the little adapters and whatnot. I have a couple clear sections here so I can make sure things are coming out. You also need to make sure to have one of these little guys that keeps your sewer hose up off the ground. It also helps you create a slope from your rig to wherever the sewer hookup is. And we've actually been in a couple states where these are required by state law to get your sewer line up off the ground. There's a bunch of different versions of things like this, but make sure you have some with you if you're going to be traveling in some of those states. Okay, and the last thing sewer related, when you're done working with your sewer and you get your gloves off, the very first thing you want to do is grab your hand sanitizer. I always keep some right down here in the bay, and also after using that, as soon as I go inside, I make sure to wash my hands with nice hot soapy water. You never know, even if there's not an incident, you never know, right? Also, a couple times that I've had a little bit of an incident and get something on my gloves, I will leave them on and use my outdoor shower here to wash my hands in my gloves with hot soapy water, and then get the gloves off, leave them out to dry, and wash my hands again right here. The next thing I wanted to talk to you all about is an item that we see a lot of people use improperly. I'm talking about stabilizer legs. If you have like a big fifth wheel, or if you have a motorhome that has the big hydraulic leveling things, I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about these stabilizing legs. We have power ones. There's a little switch here that runs them up and down. There are also the scissor style where people use like the hand crank, or sometimes they use a power drill to run them up and down. Those are stabilizer legs. They are not load bearing, okay? When we set our stabilizing legs up, we do 2 things. You'll see that we have all of the leveling blocks under there. That is to bring the ground up so the leg only comes down less than 45 degrees. That gives you a nice strong angle, and that keeps the rig from shaking a lot. And also when we run these down, we run them down until they contact the little pads, and then like a click more to make sure they're nice and tight. We are not lifting the rig. You should never see your rig move up at all when you run these down. If you do that, you will destroy them. You will bend these. If you have the big scissor jack ones and there's a lot of movement this way, you will probably topple them over and you might do damage to your frame. So, these are stabilizing legs. They are not load bearing. Do not put the weight of your rig on these. We see people do that way too many times, both in person and on YouTube, so don't do that. The last thing I wanted to talk to you all about is establishing a routine. If you want to be successful at camping and have a good time and not worry about the logistics of all of this stuff, figure out your routine. We have a routine. Aaron and I have a routine. So when we pull into a site, we know what we're doing. We level side to side. We hook up the power. We get up off the truck. We level front to back. And then we do the X-chocks. We do the stabilizing legs. And then Aaron goes in, gets the slides out, and starts doing inside setup, while I stay outside here and I do water and sewer. And that's our routine. Like, we know it by heart. We've done it so many times. And I know it's difficult. Like, if you only go out a couple weekends or a week or two here every year, it's probably pretty easy to forget about things. We've been doing this for 18 months straight, which means we have set up and broken down a lot. So it really has become ingrained in our heads. But if you need a checklist, make a checklist and follow that checklist every time. Have one for setting up and have one for breaking down to make sure you don't forget anything. The more you do it, the more you will kind of feel when you forget something. And it's funny, whenever we get into a site and we don't have to unhook, or if we're just somewhere for one night and we're not doing like a full hookup, the next morning we're like, something feels weird, like we were getting in the truck and ready to move and something feels off because we didn't go through our full routine. We know everything's fine because we didn't do like a full breakdown and setup, but you kind of get that feeling. So the more you do it, or if you have a checklist, it will help you be successful and get everything done. So here's to some great camping this summer, and make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know down below if you have a routine or a checklist, or if you found any of these tips useful. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks.